Some people freeze when death comes calling. Alara Vance ran straight at it. The morning she threw herself between bullets and a stranger, she had $17 in her bank account and no reason to believe tomorrow would be different. But in the 3 seconds it took for her body to hit pavement, everything changed. The woman she saved was untouchable. The son who arrived too late was unforgiving. And the enemies who missed their shot? They don't miss twice. This is the story of the girl who saved a queen and married a monster. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The coffee was shit, the tips were worse, and Alara's feet hadn't stopped aching since Tuesday. She balanced 3 plates along her left arm, 2 scrambled, 1 over easy, all with the hash browns nobody actually wanted but everybody ordered, and shouldered through the kitchen door of Mel's Diner with the kind of exhausted grace that came from 6 years of doing this exact same thing. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering in that way that meant maintenance wasn't coming anytime soon. The smell of grease and burnt toast clung to everything. Her uniform, her hair, probably her soul at this point. "Order up for table 9, she called, sliding the plates down with practiced efficiency. The trucker in the corner booth barely looked up, just grunted and reached for the ketchup. Alara wiped her hands on her apron and glanced at the clock. 7:43 a.m. Another hour and Denise would show up for the mid-shift, which meant Alara could finally sit down for 5 minutes and pretend her lower back didn't feel like it was held together with duct tape and spite. She'd been working doubles for 3 weeks straight. Rent was due Friday, and her landlord had stopped accepting excuses sometime around month 2 of her being late. The radiator in her apartment building had died in January. It was March now. She'd learned to sleep in 2 hoodies and still wake up cold. This was life. Not a good one. Not the one she'd imagined when she was 18 and stupid, and thought moving to the city meant something would finally happen. But it was hers. Barely. "Alara, you got table 6, Mel barked from behind the register, not looking up from his crossword puzzle. She grabbed the coffee pot and headed over, forcing something that resembled a smile. Table 6 was occupied by an older woman, maybe late 60s, dressed in a way that made Alara immediately aware of how cheap her own clothes were. Tailored coat, silk scarf, leather gloves resting on the table like they cost more than Alara made in a month. The woman didn't belong here. Mel's Diner was the kind of place where people came because it was cheap and open 24 hours, not because they wanted to. This woman looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled, "How the Other Half Lives and You Never Will." "Morning," Alara said, pouring coffee without being asked. "What can I get you?" The woman glanced up, and for just a second something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition, though that didn't make sense because Alara had never seen her before in her life. "Just the coffee, thank you," the woman said. Her voice was smooth, measured, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "You sure? Kitchen makes a decent omelet if you're hungry." "I'm certain." Alara nodded and stepped back, but something made her hesitate. The woman's hands were shaking, just barely, and her eyes kept flicking toward the window like she was waiting for something, or watching for it. "You okay?" Alara asked before she could stop herself. The woman's gaze snapped to her, sharp and assessing. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. It was small and sad and gone almost as soon as it appeared. "That's very kind of you to ask." It wasn't an answer, but Alara didn't push. She'd learned a long time ago that people came to diners like this because they didn't want to be bothered. Whatever this lady was dealing with, it wasn't Alara's business. She turned to head back to the counter. That's when the black SUV pulled up outside. Alara noticed it because it was the kind of vehicle that stood out. Sleek, expensive. Tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside. It idled at the curb for a moment, engine rumbling low. And then the window rolled down. Everything happened in seconds. The barrel of a gun appeared first, black and cold and impossible. Alara's brain stuttered, trying to process what she was seeing, because things like this didn't happen. Not here. Not in real life. The woman at table 6 stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum. Alara's body moved before her mind caught up. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't do any of the smart things a person should do when they see a gun pointed at someone. She just ran. Straight toward the woman, straight toward the window, straight into the path of something she didn't understand but knew, absolutely knew, was about to destroy everything. Her shoulder hit the woman's chest just as the first shot cracked through the air. The sound was worse than she'd imagined, louder, sharper. It punched through the diner like a physical thing, shattering the window and sending glass spraying inward in a glittering cascade. Alara felt the impact before the pain. Once, twice, 3 times. Her body jerked with each hit and she went down hard, the woman crumpling beneath her. The floor was cold, sticky. Someone was screaming. Maybe Mel. Maybe the trucker. Maybe her. She couldn't breathe. The air had turned into something thick and wrong, filling her lungs like water. Her chest burned, her side burned, everything burned. Above her, tires squealed as the SUV peeled away, the sound fading into the distance like a nightmare retreating at dawn. Alara tried to move. Couldn't. Tried to speak. Couldn't. The woman beneath her was saying something, her voice high and panicked, but the words didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. Footsteps. Running, shouting, and then hands pressing down on her chest, her side. It hurt so bad she tried to scream, but nothing came out except a wet, choking sound that terrified her more than anything else. "Stay with me," someone said. A man's voice. Deep. Commanding. "Don't you dare die. Do you hear me? Don't you dare." She didn't know who he was talking to. Her vision was swimming, the edges going dark and soft. She could see faces above her. The woman from table 6, streaked with blood that wasn't hers. Mel, white as a sheet, and someone else. A man she didn't recognize. Broad shoulders, dark hair, eyes like a winter storm, cold and furious and locked on her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Get the car," he snapped at someone. "Now." Alara tried to focus on his face, but it kept blurring. She was so tired. More tired than she'd ever been. And that was saying something because she'd worked a double yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Maybe she could just close her eyes for a second. Just a second. "No." The man's voice cracked like a whip. "Eyes open. Look at me." She did, or tried to. His face swam back into view, and she realized he was holding her. One arm beneath her shoulders, the other pressed against her ribs, his hands slick with blood. Her blood. "What's your name?" he demanded. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Your name," he repeated, and there was something desperate beneath the command now, something raw. "Alara," she managed. It came out as a whisper, barely audible. His jaw tightened. "Alara, I need you to hold on. Can you do that?" She didn't know. She didn't think so. But she nodded anyway, because he was looking at her like her answer mattered, like she mattered. And then the world disappeared entirely. When consciousness came back, it came in pieces. Pain first. Sharp and relentless, radiating from her chest and side like someone had set her on fire from the inside out. Then sound. Beeping, steady and rhythmic, a machine of some kind. Then smell, antiseptic, clean, sterile, hospital. Alara's eyes cracked open and immediately regretted it. The lights were too bright. Everything was too bright. She groaned and tried to move, but her body refused to cooperate. "Easy." The voice came from her right. She turned her head, slowly, because even that hurt, and found the man from the diner sitting beside her bed. He looked different in the fluorescent hospital lighting. Older, maybe. Tired. His shirt was gone, replaced by a dark sweater that did nothing to hide the blood staining his hands. He hadn't washed them yet. Hadn't left. "You're awake," he said, and there was something in his voice she couldn't identify. Relief, maybe. Or surprise. Where? Her throat felt like sandpaper. She coughed, wincing at the fresh wave of pain it brought. He reached for a cup on the bedside table and held it to her lips. Water. She drank greedily, not caring that half of it spilled down her chin. "You're in a private facility," he said when she'd finished. "You were shot 3 times, once in the shoulder, twice in the torso. You lost a lot of blood." The words didn't feel real. Shot. She'd been shot. "The woman," Alara croaked. "Is she—" "She's fine, thanks to you." Alara closed her eyes. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like an idiot. Who runs toward gunfire? Who does that? Why? The man's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp and demanding. "Why did you do it?" She opened her eyes again and met his gaze. He was staring at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, like her existence personally offended him. "I don't know," she said honestly. "You don't know." He repeated the words slowly, like he was testing them for truth. "You threw yourself in front of 3 bullets for a woman you'd never met, and you don't know why." She looked scared. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Elara frowned. "I saved her?" "You saved my mother." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. "Do you know who I am?" She shook her head. "Adrian Moretti." The name didn't mean anything to her. Should it? He must have seen the confusion on her face because his mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You really don't know. Should I?" "Most people do." He sat back, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "My mother is Sophia Moretti. I run the largest syndicate on the East Coast. The people who tried to kill her today? They'll try again. And now they know your face." The words landed like stones, heavy and cold. "I don't understand," Elara said slowly. "You saved her life. That makes you a liability. A loose end." He paused. "They'll come for you." Fear spiked through her chest, sharp and immediate. "Why would they come for me? I don't know anything. I'm nobody." "You stopped their hit. You're a witness, and in my world, witnesses don't get to walk away." Elara's heart was pounding now, each beat sending fresh pain through her chest. "Then why are you telling me this? Why not just—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "Because you saved my mother's life, and I pay my debts." "I don't want anything from you." "That's unfortunate, because I'm the only thing standing between you and a bullet." Elara stared at him, searching for some sign that he was joking, exaggerating, anything. But his face was carved from stone, expressionless and absolute. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "I want you to stay alive," he said. "And the only way that happens is if you disappear. New identity, new city, new life." It should have sounded appealing, a fresh start. Wasn't that what she'd wanted? But the way he said it made it sound like a prison sentence. "And if I say no?" His expression darkened. "Then you'll be dead within 48 hours. The machines beside her beeped steadily, filling the silence between them. "You're serious," she said. "I don't joke about survival." Elara closed her eyes again, trying to process everything he'd just said. Her life, her boring, exhausting, ordinary life, had just been ripped apart by 3 seconds of stupidity. And now this stranger was telling her she had to vanish, give up everything. For what? For doing the right thing? "I need time to think," she said. "You don't have time." "Then I guess you'll have to make some." She opened her eyes and met his gaze head on, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "I just got shot 3 times saving your mother. The least you can do is give me a few hours to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the rest of my life." For the first time since she'd woken up, something almost like respect crossed his face. 6 hours, he said, standing. "Then I need an answer." He moved toward the door, his footsteps silent despite his size. "Wait," Elara called. He paused, glancing back. "Your mother, is she really okay?" Adrian's expression softened, just barely, just enough. "She's alive, because of you." And then he was gone, leaving Elara alone with the beeping machines and the weight of an impossible choice. The 6 hours passed too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Elara spent most of them staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the impossible situation she'd found herself in. A nurse came in twice to check her vitals and adjust her IV, but didn't speak beyond the necessary pleasantries. The room was private, nicer than any hospital room Elara had ever seen, and the silence was suffocating. She thought about running, just pulling out the IV and walking out the door and never looking back. But where would she go? Her apartment? The diner? Both places Adrian, and apparently his enemies, knew about. She thought about calling the police, but what would she even say? "A crime lord told me I'm in danger?" They'd laugh her out of the station. Or worse, they'd take her statement and then she'd end up in witness protection, which sounded an awful lot like what Adrian was already offering. She thought about her life, really thought about it, and realized with a strange sort of clarity that there wasn't much to leave behind. No family. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, and she'd been on her own ever since. No close friends, just work acquaintances who'd forget her name within a week. No boyfriend, no girlfriend, no romantic entanglements of any kind. Just Mel's diner, a shitty apartment, and a future that looked exactly like her present. When Adrian walked back into the room exactly 6 hours later, Alara had made her decision. "I'll do it," she said before he could speak. "I'll disappear." He nodded once, unsurprised. "Smart choice. When do I leave?" "Tomorrow. I'll have everything arranged. New identity, bank account, relocation assistance." "Where?" "Somewhere far from here. Somewhere they won't think to look." Alara swallowed hard. "And I can never come back." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "No." She nodded, feeling the weight of it settle over her like a shroud. This was it. The end of Alara Vance, waitress, nobody, survivor. Adrian moved closer to the bed, his expression unreadable. "There is another option." She looked up sharply. "What?" "It's not one I'd normally consider, but given the circumstances," he trailed off, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You could stay." "Stay where?" "Here? With me, under my protection." Alara's laugh came out bitter. "As what? Your pet project?" "As my wife." The words hit like a physical blow. She stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Marriage would make you untouchable. No one in my world would dare come after you if you were under my name, my protection." "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious." Alara shook her head slowly, disbelief warring with a hysterical urge to laugh. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "You know nothing. I could be anyone, a criminal, a psychopath." "You're a waitress who threw herself in front of bullets to save a stranger," Adrian said flatly. "That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." "You're insane." "Probably." He crossed his arms, his expression unchanging. "But I'm also the only option you have if you want to stay in this city, in this life." "This isn't a life, this is—" She gestured helplessly at the hospital room, at him, at everything. "This is insane." "Yes," he agreed. "It is." They stared at each other for a long moment. "Why?" Alara asked finally. "Why would you do this?" "Because I owe you a debt I can never repay. My mother is the only family I have. The only person in this world who—" He stopped, his expression hardening. "You saved her. That means something." "So this is about obligation." "Yes." At least he was honest. Alara closed her eyes, her mind racing. Marriage, to a man she didn't know. A criminal, someone dangerous. But also someone who'd sat beside her hospital bed for 6 hours, waiting for her to wake up. Someone who'd held her while she bled out on a diner floor and refused to let her die. She opened her eyes. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what exactly does this marriage look like?" "Practical. You'd live in my home, under constant security. We'd maintain appearances in public, in private." He shrugged. "You'd have your own space, your own life, within reason." "Within reason. I can't have you wandering the city without protection. But inside the estate, you'd be free to do as you please." "So I'd be a prisoner." "You'd be alive." Alara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to take his insane proposal and shove it, but the alternative was disappearing into witness protection, which sounded an awful lot like another kind of prison. At least this way she'd know what she was walking into. "I need to think about it," she said. "You have until morning." "That's not enough time." "It's all the time you have." He moved toward the door again, then paused. "For what it's worth, I wouldn't offer this if I didn't think you could handle it." "Handle what? Being married to a criminal?" "Being married to me." And with that, he left. Morning came too fast. Alara hadn't slept. How could she? Her entire world had been turned upside down in less than 24 hours, and now she was supposed to make a decision that would define the rest of her life. Disappear and start over. Or marry a stranger and step into a world she didn't understand. Both options were terrible. Both options were impossible. But she had to choose. The door opened and Adrian walked in carrying a small black box. He looked like he hadn't slept either, though his appearance was still immaculate. Dark suit, perfectly styled hair, the kind of put together that came from years of practice. "You have an answer?" he asked without preamble. Alara took a breath, held it, released it. "Yes." He waited. "I'll marry you." Something flickered across his face. Relief? Surprise? She couldn't tell. "You're certain?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Honest. I appreciate that." He set the black box on the bedside table and opened it. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that probably cost more than Alara would make in 10 years. "It was my grandmother's," he said quietly. "My mother wanted you to have it." Alara stared at the ring, her throat tight. "She doesn't even know me." "She knows you saved her life. That's enough." He took the ring from the box and held it out. "May I?" Alara extended her left hand, surprised by how steady it was. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "We'll make it official this afternoon," he said. "I have a judge who owes me a favor. After that, you'll move into the estate. I'll have your things collected from your apartment." "I don't have much." "Then it won't take long." Alara looked down at the ring on her finger, the diamond catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the white hospital sheets. "This is really happening," she said softly. "Yes. I don't even know you." "You will." She looked up at him, searching his face for some clue about what kind of man she'd just agreed to spend her life with. But Adrian's expression gave nothing away. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked bluntly. His eyes hardened. "No." "Are you going to lie to me?" "Not if I can help it." "Are you going to expect me to be a real wife?" Understanding crossed his face. "No. This is a marriage of protection, not anything else. I won't touch you unless you ask me to." Alara nodded, something in her chest loosening slightly. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he echoed. They sat in silence for a moment. "I'm terrified," Alara admitted. "Good. Fear will keep you alive." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" "No, it's supposed to be honest." Despite everything, Alara almost smiled. Adrian stood, straightening his suit jacket. "I'll be back this afternoon. Rest. You'll need your strength for what comes next." "What comes next?" He paused at the door, glancing back at her one last time. "Everything." The wedding happened in a courthouse with no witnesses except the judge, Adrian's lawyer, and Sophia Moretti. Alara met her properly for the first time that afternoon. Sophia was smaller than she'd seemed in the diner, delicate and refined, with silver hair and eyes that held the same cold intensity as her son's. But when she looked at Alara, there was warmth there, genuine gratitude. "Thank you," Sophia said simply, taking Alara's hands in hers. "For my life." Alara didn't know what to say. "You're welcome" seemed inadequate. "You're very brave," Sophia continued. "Foolish, perhaps, but brave." "I've been hearing that a lot lately." Sophia smiled. "Adrian will take care of you. He can be difficult, cold, but he protects what's his, and now you're his." The words should have felt possessive, wrong, but coming from Sophia, they almost sounded like a promise. The ceremony itself was brief, perfunctory. No vows beyond the legal minimum. No kiss. Just signatures on paper and a judge declaring them legally bound. Alara Vance became Alara Moretti, and just like that, her old life was gone. The Moretti estate sat on 20 acres outside the city, surrounded by high walls and security cameras. As the car pulled through the iron gates, Alara caught her first glimpse of what would be her new home. It was massive, more mansion than house, with elegant architecture that spoke of old money and older power. Gardens stretched out on either side, meticulously maintained despite the early spring chill. "It's beautiful," she said without thinking. Adrian, sitting beside her in the back of the car, glanced at her. "It's secure." "Can it be both?" "I suppose." The car stopped at the front entrance, and Adrian got out first, then offered her his hand. Alara took it, ignoring the sharp pull of her still healing wounds as she climbed out. The front door opened before they reached it, and a man in his 50s appeared. He was dressed in a simple suit, his expression professionally neutral. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, with a slight nod. "Welcome. I'm Marcus, the estate manager. If you need anything, you have only to ask." "Thank you," Alara said, feeling absurdly out of place. Marcus stepped aside, and Adrian led her into the house. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, marble floors, art on the walls that probably cost more than Alara's entire existence up to this point. "I'll show you to your room," Adrian said. "Your room, not our room." Alara followed him up a grand staircase and down a long hallway. He stopped at a door near the end and pushed it open. The room beyond was bigger than her entire apartment had been. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, and floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the gardens. There was a sitting area with a couch and chairs, a desk, and two doors that presumably led to a bathroom and closet. "This is yours," Adrian said. "My room is at the other end of the hall. You won't be disturbed unless you ask for company." Alara stepped inside, trying to process the space. Her space. "There are clothes in the closet," Adrian continued. "If they don't fit or you don't like them, tell Marcus and he'll arrange for new ones. Same with anything else you need." "Okay." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Dinner's at 7. You don't have to join us if you're not feeling up to it, but my mother would like to see you." "I'll be there." Adrian nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. Alara stood in the center of the enormous room, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had happened. 2 days ago, she'd been a waitress. Poor, invisible, ordinary. Now she was married to a crime lord, living in a mansion, and wearing a ring that cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the ring on her finger. What the hell had she done? Dinner was held in a formal dining room that could have seated 20 people but held only 3. Adrian sat at the head of the table, Sophia on his right, and Alara across from her. The food was excellent, better than anything Alara had ever tasted, but she could barely eat, too aware of the weight of the silence between courses. "How are you feeling?" Sophia asked eventually, her tone gentle. "Better," Alara said. "Still sore, but better. The doctor said you were very lucky." Lucky. That was one word for it. "I'm glad you're here," Sophia continued. "This house has been too quiet for too long." Adrian didn't respond, his attention focused on his plate. "How long have you lived here?" Alara asked, trying to fill the silence. "Adrian bought the estate 10 years ago," Sophia said. "I moved in 5 years ago, after my husband passed." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He was a terrible man." Sophia smiled faintly. "Adrian is nothing like him." Alara glanced at Adrian, who still hadn't looked up. "What was he like?" she asked. "Your husband?" "Cruel," Sophia said simply. "Violent. He built the empire Adrian now runs, but he did it through fear and brutality. Adrian rebuilt it differently." "Differently how?" For the first time, Adrian spoke. "I don't kill unless I have to. My father killed for sport." The words were delivered flatly, without emotion, but they landed heavy. Alara set down her fork, her appetite gone completely. "I don't expect you to understand this world," Adrian said, finally looking at her, "and I won't apologize for it. But I want you to know what you've walked into. I'm starting to figure that out." "Good." Sophia cleared her throat delicately. "Perhaps we could discuss something more pleasant?" Adrian's mouth twitched. "Such as?" "Such as the fact that you're married now and haven't introduced your wife to anyone." "There's no one to introduce her to." "Nonsense. You have colleagues, associates." "I have employees and people who owe me favors, not friends." Sophia sighed. "You're impossible. I'm practical." Alara watched the exchange with fascination. This was the most human she'd seen Adrian since they met. The most normal. "Do you have friends?" Sophia asked, turning to Alara. "Not really," Alara admitted. "I worked a lot. Didn't have time for much else." "Well, now you have time." Sophia smiled. "And you have me." It was such a simple statement, but it made Alara's throat tighten unexpectedly. "Thank you," she said quietly. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You saved my life, dear. The least I can do is make sure you have one worth living." The first week passed in a blur. Alara spent most of it recovering, both physically and mentally. Her wounds healed slowly, and the doctors came every other day to check her progress. She explored the estate when she felt strong enough, discovering rooms she didn't know what to do with, and gardens that took her breath away. Adrian was a ghost. She saw him at dinner most nights, but he rarely spoke beyond basic pleasantries. He left early in the morning and came back late at night, and Alara got the impression he was avoiding her. Not that she minded. She needed the space to adjust. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed determined to adopt her. They had tea every afternoon in the sitting room, and Sophia told her stories about Adrian as a child, how serious he'd been, how he'd learned to read at 4 and never smiled at birthday parties, how he'd protected her from his father even when it meant taking beatings himself. "He doesn't let people in," Sophia said one afternoon. "Not anymore, but I think you might be different." "I don't think he wants to let me in," Alara said. "He married you, didn't he?" "Out of obligation." "Perhaps, but Adrian doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. If he'd truly wanted you gone, you'd be in another city by now." Sophia stirred her tea thoughtfully. "He sees something in you. He just doesn't know what to do with it yet." Alara wasn't sure she believed that, but it was nice to think about. On the 8th day, everything changed. Alara was in the library, a massive room filled with books she'd never have time to read, when Adrian walked in. It was early afternoon, and she'd never seen him home at this hour. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. She set down her book. "Okay. There's been a development." Something in his tone made her stomach drop. "What kind of development?" "The people who tried to kill my mother have made contact." Alara's blood went cold. "What do they want?" "You." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and final. "They know you're here," Adrian continued. "They know we're married, and they've made it clear that as long as you're alive, they consider the job unfinished." Alara stood slowly, her heart pounding. "So what do we do?" Adrian's expression was carved from stone. "We end it." "End it how?" "I'm going to kill them." He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. Alara swallowed hard. "All of them?" "Every single one." "When?" "Tonight." She shook her head slowly. "This is insane." "This is survival." He moved closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I need you to stay in the house. Don't leave your room. Don't open the door for anyone except Marcus or my mother." "What if something happens to you?" "It won't." "But what if—" "It won't," he repeated, and there was such absolute certainty in his voice that Alara almost believed him. Almost. "I don't want you to kill people because of me," she said quietly. Adrian's expression softened just barely. "I'm not doing this because of you. I'm doing it because they came after my family. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." They stood in silence for a moment. "I'm scared," Alara admitted. "Good. Stay scared. It'll keep you sharp." And then he was gone, leaving Alara alone with her fear and a library full of books she couldn't focus on. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in her room listening to every sound, jumping at every shadow. The house was quiet. Too quiet. At 3 a.m., she heard cars pulling up outside. Voices, movement, and then, finally, footsteps in the hallway. Her door opened. Adrian stood in the doorway, blood on his shirt and exhaustion written into every line of his face. "It's done," he said. Alara stood, her legs shaking. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Did you?" "Yes." She didn't need him to elaborate. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. Adrian nodded once. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start over." "Start over how?" "With you alive, and them gone." He turned to leave, but Alara called out. "Adrian?" He paused. "I'm glad you came back." For the first time since she'd met him, Adrian smiled. It was small and fleeting, but it was real. "So am I." And for the first time since this nightmare began, Alara believed they might actually survive it. The blood came out of Adrian's shirt easier than Alara expected. She found herself in the laundry room at 4 in the morning, scrubbing at the fabric with cold water and trying not to think about whose blood it was. Whose life had ended so hers could continue. The water ran pink, then clear, and she hung the shirt to dry with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She'd offered to help. Adrian had looked at her like she'd grown a second head. You don't need to do that, he'd said. I know. I want to. He'd handed her the shirt without another word and disappeared down the hallway, leaving her alone with the evidence of what he'd done for her. Sleep didn't come that night, or the next. By the third day, Alara was running on coffee and adrenaline, jumping at shadows and unable to shake the feeling that something was coming, that the threat wasn't really over. You look terrible, Sophia said over breakfast. Thanks. I mean it, dear. You need to rest. I can't. Sophia set down her teacup with a soft clink. The danger has passed. Adrian made sure of it. How can you be sure? Because when Adrian eliminates a threat, it stays eliminated. She said it so calmly, like they were discussing the weather. You're safe now. You need to start believing that. But belief didn't come easy. Not when Alara kept seeing the blood on Adrian's shirt every time she closed her eyes. Not when she knew what he was capable of, what he'd done for her. That afternoon, she found him in his study, a room she'd been avoiding because it felt too much like his space, somewhere she didn't belong. But she needed answers, and hiding wasn't getting her any. She knocked, waited. Come in. Adrian sat behind a massive mahogany desk, papers spread out in front of him. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Is everything all right? He asked. I don't know. Is it? He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're worried. Of course I'm worried. 3 days ago you went out and killed people. I don't even know how many. 7. The number landed like a punch. 7 lives. Gone. Because of her. Alara, Adrian said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Sit down. She did, perching on the edge of one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Those men would have killed you, he continued. They would have tortured you first to find out what you knew, even though you know nothing. Then they would have killed my mother anyway, just to make a point. This isn't a world where mercy is rewarded. I know that. She stopped, trying to find the words. I don't know how to live with it. You don't have to live with it. I do. That's not how this works. We're married. That makes it my responsibility too. Adrian's expression hardened. No, it doesn't. You didn't ask for this life. I won't let you carry that weight. You don't get to decide what I carry. They stared at each other across the desk, and Alara saw something shift in his eyes, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. You're right, he said finally. I don't, but I can try to protect you from it. I don't want protection from reality. I want honesty. You want honesty? He stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. Fine. I've killed more people than I can count. Some deserved it. Some probably didn't. I sleep fine at night because I tell myself it's necessary, that it keeps the people I care about safe. But the truth is, I don't know anymore if that's true or if I'm just good at justifying violence. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Why are you telling me this? Alara asked quietly. Because you asked for honesty, and because you should know what kind of man you married. I already know. Do you? You're the kind of man who sits beside a stranger's hospital bed for 6 hours, who gives them a choice instead of just making them disappear, who protects his mother and keeps his word. She paused. And yes, you're also the kind of man who kills people. But that's not all you are. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. You're either very naive or very stupid, he said, or very tired of being afraid. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Fair enough? The moment broke when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted immediately. All business again. I need to take this, he said. Alara stood. Of course. As she reached the door, he called out, Alara. She turned. Thank you for the shirt. She nodded and left, feeling like something had shifted between them. Something small, but significant. The days started to blur together after that. Alara fell into a routine of sorts. Breakfast with Sophia, afternoons in the library or walking the gardens, dinners where Adrian sometimes showed up and sometimes didn't. The wounds in her chest healed to pink scars that ached when it rained. The nightmares came less frequently. She was starting to feel almost normal when Marcus found her in the garden 2 weeks later. Mrs. Moretti, there's someone here to see you. Alara looked up from the rosebush she'd been examining. Who? She says her name is Diana, from the diner. The name hit her like cold water. Diana. The morning shift manager who'd trained Alara 6 years ago and mostly left her alone after that. Did she say what she wants? No, ma'am, but Mr. Moretti asked me to tell you that you don't have to see her if you don't want to. Of course he had, always protecting. Where is she? The front entrance. Alara brushed the dirt off her hands and followed Marcus back to the house. Diana stood just inside the doorway, looking wildly out of place in her diner uniform, her eyes wide as she took in the marble floors and crystal chandelier. Holy shit, Diana breathed when she saw Alara. This is where you live now? Hi, Diana. Don't hi, Diana, me. What the hell happened to you? One day you're slinging eggs, the next you're gone, and Mel's saying you quit without notice, and now you're living in a freaking mansion. Alara glanced at Marcus, who took the hint and disappeared down the hallway. It's complicated, she said. I'll bet. Jesus, Alara, we thought you were dead. There were cops at the diner asking questions about the shooting, and you just vanished. I'm sorry. I couldn't. Couldn't what? Send a text. I know we weren't close, but come on. The hurt in Diana's voice was real, and Alara felt a pang of guilt. She hadn't thought about the people she'd left behind, hadn't considered that anyone would actually worry. You're right, Alara said. I should have said something. I just didn't know what to say. Diana's expression softened slightly. Are you okay? Really? Yeah, I'm okay. And this... Diana gestured at the house, the obvious wealth. This is real? You're not in some kind of trouble? Alara almost laughed. If only she knew. I'm not in trouble, I'm married. Diana's eyebrows shot up. Married? To who? It's a long story. I've got time. But before Alara could figure out how to explain any of it, Adrian appeared at the top of the stairs. He descended slowly, his presence filling the space in that way he had, and Diana's mouth fell open slightly. You must be Diana, Adrian said, extending his hand. I'm Adrian, Alara's husband. Diana shook his hand mechanically, her eyes darting between them. You're her husband? Yes. And you live here? We do. And you're... Diana stopped, seeming to realize she was about to say something rude. Wealthy? Adrian supplied. Yes. Diana looked at Alara. What the hell happened in that diner? I met Adrian's mother, Alara said carefully. We got a talking. Things progressed quickly. It was the story they'd agreed on, simple, vague, unverifiable. Diana didn't look convinced, but she also didn't push. Well, okay then. I guess congratulations are in order. Thank you, Alara said. An awkward silence fell. I should get back to work, Diana said finally. I just wanted to make sure you were all right, and to tell you that if you ever want to grab coffee or something, you know where to find me. I'd like that. Diana nodded, gave Adrian one more uncertain glance, and left. As soon as the door closed, Alara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That went well, Adrian said dryly. She thinks I married you for money. Didn't you? Alara shot him a look. I married you to stay alive. The money is just a really weird bonus. He almost smiled. Fair distinction. Should I have told her the truth? No, the less people know, the safer everyone is. He paused. Did you want to tell her? I don't know. Maybe. It felt wrong lying to her. You'll get used to it. The words should have sounded cynical, but they just sounded tired. Is that what your life is? Alara asked. Just constant lying? Yes? That sounds exhausting. It is. He started back up the stairs, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you have to do it too. And he was gone before she could respond. That night, Alara couldn't sleep again. Not because of nightmares this time, but because her mind wouldn't stop turning over everything Diana had said. Everything she'd left behind. At 2 a.m., she gave up and went downstairs to the kitchen, thinking tea might help. She was surprised to find Adrian already there, sitting at the island with a glass of whiskey. Can't sleep? He asked. Apparently not. Join the club. She poured herself water. Tea seemed too ambitious, and sat across from him. They didn't speak for a while, just existing in the quiet together. Can I ask you something? Alara said eventually. You can ask. I may not answer. Do you regret it, this arrangement? Adrian considered the question, swirling the whiskey in his glass. No. Even though I'm clearly terrible at this? You're not terrible at it. I almost told Diana everything today. But you didn't. He met her eyes. That takes discipline, control. Most people can't manage it. I don't feel very controlled. Good. You shouldn't. The day you feel comfortable lying is the day you become like me. Would that be so bad? Yes. The certainty in his voice startled her. Why? She asked. Because you're... He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. You ran toward gunfire to save a stranger. You cleaned blood out of my shirt at 4 a.m, even though you didn't have to. You see the good in people. Even me. And that's rare. Precious. I won't let this world take that from you. Alara's throat tightened. I'm not that good. You're better than you think. They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. Less awkward. More comfortable. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. You can ask. I may not answer. He smiled at that, actually smiled. What made you run? That morning in the diner. You had to know it was suicide. Alara thought about it. Really thought about it. I saw her face, your mother's, and she looked so scared, and I just thought, someone should help. Someone should do something, and there was no one else, so... So you did? Yeah. That's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably both. Adrian raised his glass. To bravery and stupidity. May they never be separated. Alara clinked her water glass against his whiskey, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, she laughed. Really laughed. The sound seemed to surprise both of them. I haven't heard that before, Adrian said quietly. What? You laughing? I haven't had much to laugh about lately. No, I suppose you haven't. He drained his glass and stood. Get some sleep, Alara. Tomorrow's going to be busy. Why? What's tomorrow? You're meeting the rest of the family. Her stomach dropped. What family? You said you only had your mother. I have my mother. I also have associates who've worked for me long enough to be considered family. They'll want to meet you. Make sure you're real and not some elaborate hallucination I've dreamed up. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. But don't worry, they'll love you. How do you know? Because my mother loves you. And what Sophia Moretti loves, everyone else learns to love. Or at least respect. He left her sitting in the kitchen, her heart racing and her mind already spinning with anxiety about meeting people she didn't know in a world she didn't understand. Tomorrow came too fast. Alara spent the morning trying on and rejecting half the clothes in her closet before settling on something simple. Dark jeans and a fitted sweater that Sophia assured her looked elegant but approachable, whatever that meant. Don't be nervous, Sophia said, adjusting Alara's collar. They're going to adore you. You keep saying that, but I have no idea what I'm walking into. A family dinner, just with more security and fewer normal people. That's not helping, Sophia smiled. You saved my life, dear. They know that. You've already won them over. The dinner was held in the formal dining room, and when Alara walked in, she found 6 people already seated. All men. All watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Adrian stood. Everyone, this is my wife, Alara. Alara, this is everyone. Helpful. A man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes stood and extended his hand. Vincent Russo. I run security for the estate. It's nice to finally meet you properly. You too, Alara said, shaking his hand. The others introduced themselves in turn. Marco, the financial advisor who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. James, younger, probably early 30s, who handled acquisitions, whatever that meant. Thomas, quiet and intense, in charge of information gathering. Luis, who managed the legitimate business fronts. And finally, David, the lawyer who'd been at their wedding. We've been eager to meet the woman who finally got Adrian to settle down, Vincent said as they all took their seats. I wouldn't call this settling down, Adrian said dryly. You got married. That's settled by your standards. Alara felt the weight of their attention and tried not to fidget. I'm sure Adrian told you how we met. He did, Marco said. Quite the story. That's one way to put it. You're either very brave or very crazy, James added. I can't decide which. Why not both? Alara said before she could stop herself. The table went quiet for a beat, and then Vincent laughed. Really laughed. Loud and genuine. I like her, he declared. She's got spine. She does, Sophia agreed from her seat beside Adrian. The tension eased after that. Conversation flowed more naturally, though Alara noticed they were all being careful, avoiding certain topics, steering around the darker edges of their world. Protecting her, she realized. Or maybe protecting themselves from her judgment. It was Thomas who finally broke the unspoken rule. I have to ask, he said, setting down his wine glass. Do you regret it? Running into that gunfire? Thomas, Adrian said, his voice carrying a warning. It's all right, Alara said. She thought about the question. Really thought about it. I regret getting shot. That hurt like hell. But do I regret saving Sophia? No. Even knowing what it cost you? Thomas pressed. Your old life, your freedom. What freedom? I was a waitress living in a dump and barely making rent. I'm not saying this. She gestured at the room, the house, everything. Is better necessarily. It's just different. Different how? Vincent asked, genuinely curious. I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. More laughter. The conversation moved on, but Alara caught Adrian watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. After dinner, as people filtered out to the sitting room for drinks, Adrian caught her arm. You did well, he said quietly. I didn't do anything. You were yourself. That's harder than you think in this world. Is that what you want? For me to be myself? Yes. Even if myself doesn't fit here? His expression softened, especially then. They joined the others in the sitting room, and Alara found herself pulled into conversation after conversation. Vincent told stories about Adrian as a younger man, more serious even than now, if that was possible. Sophia shared embarrassing childhood memories that made Adrian scowl but didn't deny. Marco loosened up after his third drink and actually smiled. It felt almost normal, almost like a real family gathering. Until Luis's phone rang, the change was immediate. Luis stepped away, listened for 30 seconds, and then his face went pale. We have a problem, he said. The room went silent. What kind of problem? Adrian asked, his voice deadly calm. The Castellano family. They're making moves on the waterfront, our waterfront. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something cold and dangerous entered his eyes. When? Started an hour ago. They've hit 3 of our warehouses. Casualties? 2 dead, 5 injured. Alara's blood went cold. 2 dead. Just like that. Lives snuffed out while they were having dinner and telling stories. Adrian stood. Vincent, take Sophia and Alara upstairs. Lock down the estate. No one in or out. Adrian? Sophia started. Now. His tone left no room for argument. Vincent was already moving, gesturing for them to follow. But Alara stayed frozen, watching as Adrian and the others shifted into something else. Something harder, colder. This was the world she'd married into. Not the nice dinners and family stories. This. Violence and death and decisions made in seconds. Alara, Vincent said gently, we need to go. She let him guide her out of the room, Sophia close behind. As they climbed the stairs, she heard Adrian's voice, clipped and commanding, issuing orders that would probably end in more death. More blood on shirts she'd be washing at 4 a.m. Vincent led them to Sophia's room, larger than Alara's, with reinforced doors and windows. He checked the locks twice, tested the security panel, and positioned himself by the door. How long do we wait? Alara asked. Until it's over. How long does that usually take? Vincent and Sophia exchanged a look. Hours, Sophia said finally. Sometimes days. Alara sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. This is my life now. I'm afraid so, dear. I don't know if I can do this. Sophia crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. Listen to me. You're stronger than you think. You proved that when you saved my life. This world is ugly and violent and terrifying, but you don't have to face it alone. You have me. You have Adrian. And whether you believe it or not, you have a family now. A family of criminals. Yes. but family nonetheless. Sophia squeezed her hands. And family protects each other. They waited in silence after that. Minutes crawled by. Then an hour. 2. Alara's mind wouldn't stop spinning. 2 people were dead. 5 were hurt. And somewhere out there, Adrian was probably adding to that count. Because of territory. Because of business. Because this was how his world worked. At midnight, Vincent's phone buzzed. He listened, his expression unchanging, then ended the call. "It's over," he said. "We can go downstairs." "Adrian?" Sophia asked immediately. "Fine. He's on his way back." They found the others in Adrian's study. James had a cut above his eyebrow. Marco looked shaken. Thomas was on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian. And Adrian looked like he'd been to war. His shirt was torn, blood on his knuckles, a bruise forming along his jaw. But his eyes were clear and focused as he met Alara's gaze. "It's handled," he said. "Handled how?" she heard herself ask. "The Castellanos won't be a problem anymore." The words were simple. The meaning wasn't. Alara felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, just shifting. "How many?" she asked. Adrian's expression flickered. "Alara, how many people died tonight?" Silence. 12, he said finally. 12, including ours. 12 lives. Gone. In the time it took to have dinner and wait in a locked room. "I need air," Alara said. She turned and walked out before anyone could stop her, her feet carrying her through the house to the gardens. The night air was cold, biting, but she welcomed it, needed it. She'd made it halfway across the lawn when she heard footsteps behind her. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Adrian said. "I needed to get away." "From what?" "From you. From all of it." She spun to face him. 12 people, Adrian. 12. They would have killed more of mine if I hadn't acted. I know that, I know, but it doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. Then what's it supposed to be? Her voice cracked. Because I don't know how to live with this. How to be okay with the fact that people die so I can be safe. Adrian closed the distance between them, and for the first time she saw real emotion on his face. Pain, guilt, something raw and honest. "You think I'm okay with it?" he said quietly. "You think I sleep well at night knowing what I've done? What I have to keep doing? Then why do it? Because the alternative is worse. Because in this world, you either protect what's yours or you watch it burn. There's no middle ground." "That's not true. There has to be another way." "If you find one, let me know. I've been looking for 20 years. They stood in the darkness, the space between them filled with everything they couldn't say. "I don't know if I can do this," Alara whispered. "I know. Then why keep me here? Why not just send me away like you planned?" Adrian's hand came up, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Alara froze. "Because despite everything," he said, his voice rough, "I don't want you to go." The admission hung between them, vulnerable and true. Alara's breath caught. "Adrian, you asked for honesty. That's honest." His hand dropped, and he stepped back, the mask sliding into place again. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow, we bury our dead." He walked back toward the house, leaving Alara standing in the garden with her heart pounding and her mind reeling. She should be terrified. She should run. But standing there in the cold night air, watching Adrian's retreating figure, all she felt was the ache of wanting to follow. The funerals were held on a gray Thursday that matched the weight in Alara's chest. She stood beside Adrian in the cemetery, watching as 2 coffins were lowered into the ground. The men had names, Robert Chen and Marcus DeLuca. They'd had families. Lives. Futures that ended because they worked for Adrian and the Castellanos wanted to send a message. The families cried. Wives clutched children who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. And Adrian stood like stone, his expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses, his hand resting briefly on each widow's shoulder as he murmured words Alara couldn't hear. She wondered if he said he was sorry, if he promised to take care of them, if he told them their husbands died for something that mattered. She wondered if he believed any of it. When it was over, they drove back to the estate in silence. Adrian stared out the window, and Alara stared at her hands, at the wedding ring that felt heavier than it had yesterday. They'll be taken care of, Adrian said suddenly. The families. College funds for the kids. Mortgages paid off. Whatever they need. Does that make it better? No, but it's what I can do. Alara wanted to argue. Wanted to say that money didn't bring people back, didn't fix the holes left behind. But she also knew he was right. It was what he could do. The only thing, really, in a world where violence was currency and death was overhead. I'm going to my room, she said when they arrived home. Adrian nodded. Didn't try to stop her. She spent the rest of the day curled up on her bed, not crying exactly, just existing in the heavy silence of everything she was trying to process. Sophia knocked once around dinner time, but Alara pretended to be asleep. She wasn't ready to talk about it. Wasn't ready to be told again that this was just how things were, that she'd get used to it, that the dead were already dead and there was nothing to be done. Night fell. The house went quiet. Around midnight, Alara gave up on sleep and wandered downstairs, thinking maybe the library would offer some escape. Instead, she found Adrian in the sitting room, jacket discarded, tie loosened, staring into a glass of whiskey like it held answers. He looked up when she entered, and something passed between them. Recognition of shared insomnia, maybe. Or just the understanding that neither of them knew how to process what they'd witnessed. Can't sleep either? He asked. No? Want a drink? I don't drink. Smart. He took a sip anyway. You should probably start, though. It helps. Does it? Not really, but it's something to do with your hands. Alara sat in the chair across from him, tucking her legs underneath her. How do you do this? Do what? Live with it. The death, the violence, all of it. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Compartmentalization. You put it in a box, lock it away, and don't think about it unless you have to. That sounds horrible. It is. Then why? Because the alternative is falling apart, and I can't afford to fall apart. Too many people depend on me. He set down his glass. You don't have to do this, any of this. Say the word and I'll have you on a plane tomorrow. New identity, new life, far away from all of this. It was the same offer he'd made in the hospital, the escape hatch he kept leaving open. Is that what you want? Alara asked. For me to leave? I want you to be safe. Happy. Neither of which you can be here. You don't know that. Don't I? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Look at you. You've been here a month and you already look haunted. How long before that breaks you completely? Maybe I'm stronger than you think. Maybe you're more stubborn than smart. Despite everything, Alara almost smiled. You sound like Sophia. She thinks I'm being too hard on you. Are you? Probably. I don't know how else to be. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Adrian was always so controlled, so measured. But right now, sitting in the dim light of the sitting room, he just looked tired. I'm not leaving, Alara said quietly. Why not? Because... She stopped, trying to find words for something she barely understood herself. Because I made a choice. Because running feels like giving up. And because despite everything, I don't hate being here. Adrian's expression shifted. You should. I know. But I don't. They sat in silence for a while, the grandfather clock in the corner ticking away seconds that felt heavy with unspoken things. The men who died today, Alara said eventually, did they have a choice? To work for you? Everyone has a choice. That's not what I asked. Adrian sighed. Robert came to me 8 years ago. He was drowning in medical debt from his daughter's cancer treatment. I paid it off, gave him a job with good money and better insurance. He chose to stay even after his daughter went into remission. And Marcus? Marcus grew up in my father's organization. It's all he ever knew. He could have left a dozen times. He didn't. Adrian paused. They knew the risks, but that doesn't make it easier. For them or for you? Both. Alara pulled her knees closer to her chest. I keep thinking about their families, their kids. How do you explain to a child that their father died because of territory and money and things that don't actually matter? You don't. You just tell them he died protecting something important. Adrian's voice was rough. It's a lie, but it's a kinder one than the truth. What's the truth? That he died because I wasn't fast enough, smart enough, because I didn't see the Castellanos coming until it was too late. He picked up his glass again, stared into it. That's the truth. But you don't tell that to a widow. Ilara's chest tightened. She'd never heard Adrian blame himself for anything, had assumed he saw death as just part of the business, unavoidable and impersonal. She'd been wrong. It wasn't your fault, she said. Wasn't it? No, the Castellanos pulled the trigger. They made that choice. And I created the situation that led to it. I built an empire that people want to tear down. Every person who dies because of that is on me. That's not fair. Fair doesn't exist in this world. Ilara stood and crossed to his chair, surprising herself as much as him. She took the glass from his hand and set it aside, then did something she'd never done before. She took his hand. His skin was warm, rough with calluses she hadn't noticed before. His fingers twitched like he might pull away, but he didn't. You can't carry all of it, she said quietly. It'll crush you. I've been carrying it for 20 years. I'm still standing. Barely. Adrian looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw something she recognized. The same exhaustion she felt. The same weight of trying to be strong when everything felt impossible. Why do you care? He asked. I don't know. I just do. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He stared at their joined hands, and for a moment Ilara thought he might say something, might let down the walls he kept so carefully constructed. Instead, he stood, pulling his hand back gently. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be long. Why? What's tomorrow? Vincent thinks there might be more attacks coming. We're increasing security. You'll need to stay inside for a few days. The resignation in his voice made her heart ache. Adrian. Good night, Ilara. He left before she could finish, and she stood alone in the sitting room, still feeling the ghost of his hand in hers. The increased security meant armed guards at every entrance, surveillance monitors running constantly, and absolutely no leaving the estate grounds. Ilara felt like a prisoner, even though she knew it was for her safety. Sophia tried to keep her occupied with card games and conversations, but even she seemed on edge, jumping at unexpected sounds and watching the security feeds more than she pretended to. 3 days passed without incident. On the 4th day, Vincent found Ilara in the library. Mrs. Moretti, do you know how to shoot? She looked up from her book. What? A gun. Do you know how to use one? No. Why would I? Because Adrian wants you to learn. I'm not learning to shoot. Vincent's expression was patient. With respect, ma'am, you should at least know the basics, just in case. In case of what? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Ilara set down her book. Where is he? In his study. She found Adrian exactly where Vincent said, paper spread across his desk, phone pressed to his ear. He held up a finger when he saw her, 1 minute, and finished his conversation. Vincent said you want me to learn to shoot, Ilara said as soon as he hung up. I do. Why? Because if something happens and I'm not there, you need to be able to protect yourself. Nothing's going to happen. Adrian's expression hardened. You don't know that. None of us do. The Castellanos are quiet right now, but quiet doesn't mean gone. I need to know you can defend yourself if it comes to it. I don't want to shoot anyone. Neither do I, but we both do things we don't want to do. He stood, moving around the desk. Please, just learn the basics, for my peace of mind, if nothing else. The please surprised her. Adrian didn't ask for things. He commanded them. Fine, she said, but I'm not promising to be good at it. I don't need you to be good. I need you to be alive. The shooting range was in the basement, a fact that shouldn't have surprised Ilara, but somehow did. Of course Adrian had a private shooting range, probably came with the mansion. Vincent was patient as he taught her the basics. Stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger control. The weight of the gun felt wrong in her hands, heavy and cold and dangerous. Her first shot went wide. So did her second. And third. You're flinching, Vincent said, anticipating the recoil. Don't think about it. Just breathe and squeeze. Easy for you to say. Trust me, everyone struggles at first, even Adrian. I don't believe that. It's true. First time he held a gun, he dropped it. His father laughed at him for hours. Alara tried again. This time the bullet hit the target, just barely. "There you go," Vincent said encouragingly. "See? You can do this." She fired again. And again. Slowly the fear started to fade, replaced by focus. The range became a puzzle. Adjust here, compensate there, breathe through it. An hour later, she was actually hitting the center mass more often than not. "Not bad." Adrian's voice came from behind her. Alara jumped, nearly dropping the gun. Vincent quickly took it from her hands. "How long have you been watching?" she asked. "Long enough to see you're a natural." "I'm really not." "You hit the target 12 times in the last magazine. That's better than most people on their first day." He nodded to Vincent. "Thanks for teaching her." "My pleasure, boss." Vincent left them alone in the range, and Alara pulled off the ear protection, suddenly aware of how quiet it was. "I hate this," she said. "I know. But I understand why you wanted me to learn." "Good." Adrian moved to the weapons locker and pulled out a smaller gun, checking it with practiced efficiency. "This one's yours," he said, holding it out. "Lighter, easier to handle. Keep it in your nightstand." Alara stared at this weapon like it might bite her. "I don't want a gun in my room." "I don't care what you want. I care about you being alive if someone gets past security." "You really think that could happen?" "I think I've lived long enough in this world to know that anything can happen, and I'm not taking chances with your life." The intensity in his voice made something flutter in Alara's chest. "Okay," she said quietly, taking the gun. Adrian showed her how to load it, unload it, engage the safety. His hands covered hers as he guided her through the motions, and Alara became acutely aware of how close he was standing. "You remember all that?" he asked. "I think so." "Good. Practice it every day until it's muscle memory." He stepped back, and Alara immediately missed the warmth of him. "Thank you," she said, "for caring about whether I live or die." Something flickered across Adrian's face. "Of course I care." "Not everyone would." "I'm not everyone." "No," Alara agreed. "You're not." They stood there for a moment, the space between them charged with something neither seemed ready to name. Adrian broke first. "I need to get back to work." "Right, of course." But as he turned to leave, Alara called out, "Adrian?" He paused. "If something did happen, if someone got through, would you come for me?" He turned back and his eyes were fierce. "I would burn the world down to get to you." The words hit her like a physical force, stealing her breath. "Oh," she managed. "Don't doubt that," he said quietly. "Don't ever doubt that." And then he was gone, leaving Alara standing in the shooting range with a gun in her hands and her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. That night, she lay in bed staring at the nightstand drawer where she'd locked the gun. Part of her wanted to throw it in a lake. The other part, the part that was slowly adapting to this world, was glad it was there. She must have fallen asleep eventually because she woke to the sound of breaking glass. For a second, she thought she'd dreamed it, but then she heard shouting, running, the pop, pop, pop of gunfire. Her blood went ice cold. She rolled out of bed, her mind racing. The nightstand, the gun. She yanked open the drawer with shaking hands and pulled out the weapon, her fingers fumbling to disengage the safety the way Adrian had shown her. More gunfire, closer now. The door to her room burst open, and Alara swung the gun up, her heart in her throat. "Don't shoot!" Vincent shouted, hands raised. "It's me!" Alara lowered the gun, her whole body trembling. "What's happening?" "The estate's under attack. We need to get you to the safe room, now." "Where's Adrian?" "Handling it. Come on." He grabbed her arm, pulling her into the hallway. Alara could hear gunfire from downstairs, see smoke starting to curl up the staircase. Her mind flashed to the funerals, to the widows crying, to coffins being lowered into the ground. "Sophia," she gasped. "Where's Sophia?" "Already in the safe room. Move!" They ran down the hallway, Vincent practically dragging her. Behind them, someone shouted. Vincent spun, raising his own weapon, and fired 3 times. A body hit the floor. Alara's stomach lurched, but Vincent was already moving again, pushing her around a corner toward a door she'd never noticed before. He punched a code into a keypad and the door slid open, revealing a reinforced room with monitors showing camera feeds from around the estate. Sophia was inside, her face pale but composed. "Get in," Vincent ordered. Alara stumbled inside and Vincent started to follow, then jerked backward, a red stain blooming across his shoulder. "Vincent!" Alara screamed. He fell against the doorframe, and Alara saw the shooter at the end of the hallway, raising his gun for another shot. She didn't think. She raised her own weapon and fired. The recoil shocked her, but the bullet found its mark. The man went down. Vincent stared at her. "Good shot." Then he collapsed. Alara and Sophia dragged him inside, and the door slammed shut automatically, sealing them in. "He's bleeding," Alara said, her voice high and panicked. "We need to stop the bleeding." Sophia was already moving, pulling medical supplies from a cabinet. "Hold pressure here." Alara pressed her hands against Vincent's shoulder, feeling hot blood seep between her fingers. Vincent gritted his teeth but didn't cry out. "You're going to be okay," Alara said, not sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. On the monitors, she could see chaos. Men in black tactical gear spreading through the house. Adrian's security team fighting back. Bodies on the ground. She couldn't tell whose side they were on. And then she saw Adrian. He moved through the house like death itself, precise and lethal. She watched him take down 3 men in quick succession, watched him reload without breaking stride, watched him protect his home with a violence that should have terrified her. Instead, all she felt was desperate hope that he'd survive. "Where are they?" Vincent groaned, trying to sit up. "Everywhere," Sophia said, her eyes on the monitors. "How many?" "Too many." Alara kept pressure on Vincent's wound, her eyes glued to the screen showing Adrian. He'd been joined by James and Thomas now, the 3 of them working in coordination to push the attackers back. But more kept coming. "This was planned," Vincent said through gritted teeth. "They waited until we thought the threat was over." "The Castellanos?" Alara asked. "Has to be. No one else has the resources." On the monitor, Adrian took a hit. Alara saw him stagger, saw the blood on his side, saw him keep moving anyway. "No," she whispered. He cleared the room he was in, then looked directly at a camera, at her, somehow knowing she was watching. He mouthed something. She couldn't hear it, but she could read his lips. "Stay there." Alara's hands tightened on Vincent's shoulder. She wanted to scream, wanted to run to him, wanted to do something other than sit in this locked room while he bled and fought and risked everything. "He'll be okay," Sophia said quietly. "He always is." But her hands were shaking as she said it. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Slowly, the number of attackers on the monitors dwindled. Adrian's team started gaining ground, pushing them back toward the entrances. And then, finally, silence. Alara held her breath, watching the monitors. Adrian appeared on one, surveying the damage. Blood soaked his shirt, but he was standing, moving, alive. "It's over," Vincent said, his voice weak. The safe room door beeped and slid open. Adrian stood on the other side, looking like he'd walked through hell. His eyes went immediately to Alara, scanning her for injuries. "You're okay?" he asked. She nodded, unable to speak. His gaze dropped to Vincent. "How bad?" "Through and through," Vincent said. "I'll live." "Good." Adrian's attention returned to Alara, and something in his expression shifted. "You fired your weapon." "How did you?" "I watched the feed. You saved Vincent's life." "I didn't think. You did exactly what you needed to do." He stepped into the room, and despite the blood and the exhaustion and the violence still clinging to him, his voice was gentle. "You did good." Alara's eyes burned. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I've had worse." "That's not reassuring." He almost smiled. Almost. Medical teams arrived, taking Vincent away on a stretcher. Sophia went with him, leaving Adrian and Alara alone in the safe room. "We need to get you looked at too," Alara said. "In a minute." "Adrian, in a minute." He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "I need to know you're really okay. That you're not hurt. Not in shock." "I shot someone," Alara said, the reality of it hitting her all at once. "I killed someone." "You protected Vincent." "You protected yourself. That's different." "Is it?" "Yes." Alara's legs gave out, and suddenly she was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, the gun still in her hand. Adrian lowered himself beside her, wincing as his wounded side protested. I keep thinking I should feel worse, Alara said, about killing him. But all I feel is glad. Glad Vincent's alive. Glad you're alive, glad I'm alive. Does that make me a terrible person? No, it makes you a survivor. I don't feel like a survivor. I feel like I'm drowning. Adrian's hand found hers, his fingers closing around the gun and gently taking it from her grip. He set it aside, then kept holding her hand. You jumped between bullets and a stranger, he said quietly. You married a criminal to stay alive. You learned to shoot even though you hated it. You saved Vincent tonight, even though you were terrified. You're the strongest person I know, and you don't even realize it. Alara looked at him, this man who'd turned her entire world upside down, who'd given her safety and danger in equal measure, who looked at her like she mattered more than anything. I was so scared you were going to die, she whispered. I wasn't going to leave you. You almost did. I saw you get hit. Flesh wound. I've had worse. Stop saying that. It's true. Alara's free hand came up, touching the blood-soaked fabric of his shirt. Let me see. Alara, please. He sighed but lifted his shirt. The wound was a graze along his ribs, deep enough to bleed heavily, but not life-threatening. Still, seeing it made Alara's chest tighten. You need stitches, she said. Probably. And you need rest. Definitely. Then why are you sitting on the floor with me instead of getting medical attention? Adrian's expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. Because you needed me more. The words broke something open in Alara's chest. Before she could second-guess herself, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated, just a desperate need to confirm he was real and alive and here. Adrian froze for a heartbeat, then kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath. His hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the violence still clinging to him, and Alara felt everything shift. This wasn't obligation anymore, wasn't strategy, wasn't survival. This was something else entirely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. We shouldn't, he started. I know. This complicates everything. I know. I don't do relationships. I don't know how. Neither do I. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. What do you want, Alara? Really? She thought about it, about the life she'd left behind and the one she'd stumbled into, about coffee-stained uniforms and marble floors, about loneliness and violence and unexpected moments of connection. I want to stop pretending this is just a business arrangement, she said honestly. I want to stop sleeping alone in that big room while you're at the other end of the hall. She stopped, gathering courage. I want to try, really try, at this, at us. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he said, Okay? Okay? Yeah, okay. And despite the blood and the bodies and the chaos surrounding them, Alara smiled. The medics finally convinced Adrian to let them stitch him up around dawn. Alara sat beside him while they worked, watching him not flinch even though she knew it had to hurt. His hand found hers halfway through, fingers lacing together like it was the most natural thing in the world. When they were done and the medics had moved on to treat the other wounded, Adrian turned to her. You should get some rest, he said. So should you. I have things to handle first. Body count, damage assessment, finding out how they got past our security. That can wait a few hours. No, it can't. But his thumb was tracing circles on her palm, contradicting his words. People died tonight, Alara. My people. I need to know why. She understood. Hated it, but understood. Okay, she said. But when you're done, you come find me. Not your room. Mine. Something heated flashed in Adrian's eyes. You sure about that? Are you? I stopped being sure about anything the day you ran into gunfire for my mother. He stood, wincing slightly. But yeah, I'll come find you. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache, and left to deal with the aftermath of violence while Alara tried to process the fact that everything had just changed between them. Sophia found her an hour later, looking exhausted but unharmed. Vincent's going to be fine, she said, settling into the chair beside Alara. The bullet missed anything vital. He'll be back on his feet in a few weeks. Good. That's good. I saw you two, you and Adrian, in the safe room. Alara felt heat creep up her neck. Oh. Don't owe me. I've been waiting for this since the day he brought you home. Sophia smiled, though it was tinged with worry. Just be careful, dear. Adrian doesn't know how to do things halfway. When he cares about something, he becomes obsessive, possessive. It's not always healthy. I'm not asking for healthy, just real. Well, you'll certainly get that. Sophia reached over and squeezed her hand. But I'm glad. He's been alone too long. We both have. They sat together in comfortable silence until the sun fully rose, painting the damaged estate in golden light that made the bloodstains less obvious. The cleanup took 3 days. Bodies removed, bullet holes patched, windows replaced. Alara helped where she could, needing to feel useful, needing to do something other than think about the fact that she'd killed someone and felt less guilty about it than she probably should. Adrian was everywhere and nowhere, managing repairs, interrogating the one attacker they'd captured alive, attending more funerals for men who'd died defending his home. Alara saw him in passing, caught glimpses of exhaustion in his eyes. But he was always moving, always handling the next crisis. On the 4th night, she woke to find him standing in her doorway. You came, she said, sitting up. I said I would. He looked hollowed out, like he'd been running on nothing but willpower and coffee for days. Alara pulled back the covers in invitation. Just sleep, she said. Nothing else. Just sleep. Adrian crossed the room slowly, like he wasn't sure this was allowed, and climbed into bed still fully clothed. Alara shifted closer, and he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her against his chest. I'm probably going to have nightmares, he warned quietly. So am I. We can have them together. His breathing hitched, and she felt him press his face into her hair. I could have lost you, he said, so softly she almost missed it. When I saw them breach the estate, all I could think was that they were coming for you, that I wouldn't get there in time. But you did. Barely. If Vincent hadn't gotten you to the safe room, stop. We're both alive. Everyone who matters is alive. 8 of my men aren't. Alara turned in his arms until she could see his face. And that's not your fault. You didn't pull those triggers. I created the world where those triggers exist. Then uncreate it. He stared at her. What? You hate this life. I can see it in your eyes every time someone dies, every time you have to make a call you don't want to make, so change it. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I have responsibilities, people who depend on me, enemies who'd see any weakness as an opportunity to strike. Enemies like the Castellanos? Adrian's expression darkened. They're done. After this attack, I made sure of it. Alara didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know the specifics of how he'd eliminated the threat. What if there's another family after them? She asked instead. Another threat? When does it end? It doesn't. That's the point. That's not true. It ends when you decide it ends. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Explain to me why a man who clearly hates the violence, who carries the weight of every death like a stone around his neck, won't walk away. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because my father built this empire on fear and blood. When he died, I inherited it. All the territory, all the operations, all the people who worked for him. If I'd walked away, there would have been a war. Dozens of families fighting over the scraps, hundreds dead, maybe thousands. So I took control, made it less brutal than my father's version, but that still means I'm responsible for all of it. And if you left now? Same result, maybe worse. The power vacuum would be catastrophic. Alara pressed closer, feeling the tension in his body. What if you didn't leave a vacuum? What if you transitioned power gradually, found someone you trust to take over? There is no one I trust that much. Then make the organization legitimate. You said you run business fronts. What if those weren't fronts anymore? What if you actually went legal? Adrian laughed, but it was bitter. You can't just go legitimate. There are debts, obligations, people who'd rather see me dead than retired. So you're trapped. Yes. And I'm trapped with you. Yes. He pulled back to look at her. Which is why I keep giving you outs, keep telling you to leave. You could still have a normal life, Alara, away from all this. I don't want normal. I want you. The words hung between them, simple and undeniable. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm going to ruin you. You know that, right? Being with me, really being with me, means accepting things you shouldn't have to accept. Seeing things you shouldn't have to see. I already killed a man, Adrian. I already watched people die. I'm already in this world whether I want to be or not. At least if I'm with you, I'm choosing it. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Alara kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he said. I know. I don't know how to be someone's... He struggled for the word. Someone's person. I don't know how to do relationships. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. What if I'm terrible at it? Then you'll be terrible at it. I don't care. Adrian made a sound that was half laugh, half groan. You're insane. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. They lay there together, wrapped around each other, as the first light of dawn started creeping through the windows. For the first time since the attack, Alara felt something like peace. Stay, she whispered, as exhaustion started pulling her under. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian murmured back. And he didn't. The next few weeks were strange in the best way. Adrian still worked constantly, still handled the business of running a criminal empire, but he came back to her room every night. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they just existed together in comfortable silence. Sometimes they did more than that, learning each other slowly, carefully, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. Sophia watched their growing relationship with obvious approval, often engineering excuses to leave them alone together. Vincent, recovered enough to return to light duty, seemed amused by the whole thing. Never thought I'd see the day, he told Alara one afternoon while teaching her more advanced shooting techniques. Adrian actually happy. He's not happy, he's just less miserable. For him, that's the same thing. Alara lined up her shot, fired, and hit dead center. You think this is a mistake? Us? Does it matter what I think? Yeah, it does. Vincent was quiet for a moment, watching her reload. I think you're good for him. I think he's been dead inside since he was a kid, and you're the first person who's made him remember what it's like to be alive. That's not a mistake. That's a miracle. Even if it doesn't last? Even then. Some things are worth it just for existing at all. That conversation stayed with Alara as she navigated this new version of her life. She was learning to shoot better, learning the rhythms of the estate, learning the subtle dynamics of Adrian's world. She attended meetings with him sometimes, sitting quietly and observing. The men who worked for him started treating her with a respect that felt earned rather than obligatory. She was becoming part of this world, not just Adrian's wife on paper, but a real presence in his life. And then everything exploded again. It started with a phone call during dinner. Adrian's face went carefully blank as he listened, and Alara's stomach dropped. When? He asked. Then, how many? A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Alara. I need to go handle something. What happened? One of our warehouses was hit. Not by the Castellanos. They're gone. Someone new. How new? New enough that I don't know who they are yet, which means they're either very stupid or very dangerous. Can I come with you? Adrian's expression hardened. Absolutely not. Why not? Because it might be a trap. Because I don't know what I'm walking into. Because I need to know you're safe here. I'm safer with you. Alara, you just spent 2 weeks telling me we're in this together. That means I don't sit at home while you walk into danger. They stared at each other across the table, a battle of wills playing out in silence. If I say no, Adrian said slowly, you'll just find a way to follow me anyway, won't you? Probably. He closed his eyes, looking pained. You're going to be the death of me. Does that mean I can come? It means you stay in the car with Vincent, and you don't argue if I tell you to run. Agreed? Agreed. 20 minutes later, they were in the back of an armored SUV, Vincent driving, two more vehicles flanking them. Adrian was on the phone the entire ride, getting updates, giving orders, his face carved from stone. Alara watched the city slide past the tinted windows and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The warehouse district was industrial and empty at this hour, streetlights casting long shadows across cracked pavement. Adrian's convoy pulled up to a building that looked abandoned except for the bodies lying near the entrance. "Stay in the car," Adrian said, already moving. "Be careful," Alara called after him. He paused, looked back at her, and something soft crossed his face. "Always am." Then he was gone, disappearing into the warehouse with James and Thomas flanking him. Vincent stayed with Alara, his weapon drawn and ready, eyes scanning the perimeter. "How long do we wait?" Alara asked. "As long as it takes." Minutes crawled by, then they heard it, gunfire from inside the warehouse. "Shit," Vincent muttered, grabbing his radio. "We've got contact. All units close in." More gunfire, shouting, the sound of something exploding. Alara's hands clenched in her lap, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. She'd brought her gun, the one Adrian had given her, and her fingers itched to grab it. "Stay calm," Vincent said, though he looked tense. "Adrian can handle himself." More explosions. The building shook, and then the radio crackled. "Vincent, get her out of here, now!" It was Adrian's voice, tight with urgency. "What's happening?" Vincent demanded into the radio. "They're coming for her. This was a setup. Get her out now." Vincent didn't hesitate. He threw the car into gear and peeled out just as another vehicle came screaming around the corner, headed straight for them. "Hold on!" Vincent shouted. Alara braced herself as Vincent drove like a man possessed, weaving through the industrial district with the other vehicle in pursuit. Gunfire peppered the back window, but the armor held. "Who are they?" Alara gasped. "No idea, but they're organized and they know exactly what they're doing." He took a sharp turn, and Alara slammed against the door. More gunfire. The back window finally shattered, safety glass spraying inward. Vincent cursed and returned fire one-handed while driving. "Call Adrian. Tell him our position." Alara grabbed Adrian's phone from where he'd left it and hit redial on the last number. "Where are you?" Adrian's voice was ragged. "Being chased. Vincent's driving. I don't know where we are. Put me on speaker." She did. "Vincent, head for the safe house on 5th. I'm 10 minutes behind you." "Copy that," Vincent said, taking another sharp turn. Their pursuers stayed right on them. More gunfire. Alara ducked instinctively, her hand reaching for her own weapon. "Don't," Vincent said. "Not unless you have to." But then their front tire blew. The SUV spun, Vincent fighting for control, and they slammed into a concrete barrier. The impact jolted through Alara's entire body, her head cracking against something hard. For a second, everything went fuzzy. "Alara!" Vincent was pulling at her seatbelt. "We need to move. Now!" Her vision cleared enough to see the other vehicles stopping, men getting out, weapons raised. Vincent dragged her from the car, and they ran. Behind them, she heard footsteps, shouting in a language she didn't recognize. More gunfire. Vincent pushed her into an alley, and they kept running. Her lungs burned, her head throbbed, but she didn't slow down. They burst out onto a main street, and Vincent flagged down a passing car, his gun making the driver very cooperative. "Drive," he ordered, shoving Alara into the back seat. "Don't stop for anything." "Vincent," Alara started. "Get her to the safe house," he said to the terrified driver, then looked at Alara. "Tell Adrian I'm sorry." "What?" "No, Vincent, get in the car. I'll slow them down, give you time." "Vincent!" But he was already moving back toward the alley, and the driver was hitting the gas, pulling away before Alara could argue. She twisted in her seat, watching Vincent disappear into the darkness, and her heart shattered. The driver got her to the safe house, a nondescript apartment building in a better part of town. Alara stumbled inside, gave the terrified man all the cash in her pocket, and locked herself in. Then she waited. Adrian arrived 15 minutes later, looking like he'd aged a decade. He swept into the apartment and pulled her into his arms so hard it hurt. "You're okay," he breathed into her hair. "You're okay." "Vincent, I know. I'm sending people for him now." "He stayed behind so I could get away." "I know." Adrian said again, his voice rough. That's what he's supposed to do. Protect you. Alara pulled back to look at him. His face was streaked with soot and blood. Not his, she hoped. What happened at this warehouse? Ambush. They hit the warehouse to draw me out, then sent a second team after you. It was coordinated, professional. Who are they? I don't know yet, but I will. And when I find out, his expression turned deadly. They'll wish they'd never heard your name. He pulled out his phone and made call after call, coordinating search teams, gathering intelligence, activating resources Alara didn't know he had. She sat on the couch and tried to process everything. The chase, Vincent staying behind, the fact that someone had set up an elaborate trap just to get to her. Why me? She asked when Adrian finally put down the phone. Why target me specifically? Because you're my weakness. Anyone who's paying attention can see that. He sat beside her, taking her hands. I'm sorry. I never should have brought you to the warehouse. You tried to keep me in the car. I should have tried harder, should have left you at the estate. Then they might have attacked there instead. You don't know. Adrian's grip tightened. I can't lose you. Do you understand that? I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you. Alara leaned forward and kissed him, tasting smoke and desperation. You won't. I'm right here. For how long? How long before this world takes you from me like it takes everything? As long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian. He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she might disappear, and they stayed like that until his phone rang again. Yeah, he answered, then his whole body went rigid. When? A pause. Is he alive? Another pause, longer this time. Get him to the estate. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Alara with an expression that made her stomach drop. They found Vincent, he said. He's alive. Barely. But they... He stopped, his jaw clenching. They hurt him, badly, before he got away. Alara's vision blurred with tears. I want to see him. Not yet. Let the doctors work. Adrian, please, he said, and the rawness in his voice stopped her argument. Please just let me get him stable first. Then you can see him. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They got back to the estate just as the sun was rising. Medical personnel rushed to meet the car carrying Vincent, and Alara caught a glimpse of him on the stretcher. Unconscious, broken, barely recognizable. She turned into Adrian's chest and let herself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. Vincent survived. Barely. 3 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, internal bleeding that required emergency surgery, and injuries Alara didn't want to think about in detail. But he survived. When he was finally conscious and stable enough for visitors, Alara sat beside his hospital bed and held his hand. You're an idiot, she said, her voice thick with tears. A brave, stupid idiot. Vincent's smile was weak but genuine. Takes one to know one. You're the one who ran into gunfire, remember? That's different. How? I didn't know better. You did. Which makes what you did braver. He squeezed her hand weakly. Don't cry for me. I'm too pretty to watch you cry. She laughed despite herself. You're ridiculous. Yeah, but I'm alive. We're both alive. That's what matters. Adrian appeared in the doorway, and Vincent's expression shifted. You should rest, Adrian said quietly. I'm fine. You're not, but thank you for protecting her. Just doing my job, boss. No, you went beyond that, and I won't forget it. Something passed between them. Understanding, respect, the bond of men who'd been through hell together. Adrian left them alone after that, and Vincent closed his eyes. He loves you, you know, Vincent said drowsily. Don't think I've ever seen him love anything before, but he loves you. He's never said it. He doesn't have to. You can see it in how he looks at you, how he'd burn down the world to keep you safe. Vincent's breathing was evening out, sleep pulling him under. Just don't break his heart. Don't think he'd survive that. I won't, Alara whispered, but she wasn't sure if Vincent heard her. He was already asleep. That night, Alara found Adrian in his study, surrounded by files and surveillance photos. Come to bed, she said. "I need to find who did this." "You need sleep. You've been up for 2 days straight." "I'll sleep when they're dead." Alara crossed the room and physically turned his chair away from the desk. "No, you'll sleep now, because if you don't, you'll make mistakes. And mistakes get people killed." Adrian looked at her with hollow eyes. "They tortured Vincent for information about you, about our security, about everything. If he'd broken, but he didn't. He could have, anyone would have. But he didn't," Alara repeated firmly. "And he's alive. And you're going to find whoever did this and make them pay. But not tonight. Tonight you're going to come to bed and sleep and let your body heal because you're bleeding through your shirt again." Adrian glanced down at the red stain spreading across his side. The stitches from the estate attack must have torn. "Didn't notice," he muttered. "Of course you didn't." She held out her hand. "Come on, let me fix you." He let her lead him upstairs, let her carefully remove his shirt and rebandage his wounds with supplies from the bathroom. His skin was a map of scars, old and new, each one a story of violence survived. "How do you live like this?" Alara asked quietly, smoothing tape over fresh gauze. "How do you keep going when your body is literally falling apart?" "Same way you do, one day at a time." She finished the bandaging and helped him into bed. He pulled her close, and she could feel the exhaustion radiating off him. "I'm going to end this," he said into the darkness. "Whoever's behind these attacks. I'm going to find them, and I'm going to end it permanently." "I know." And then he stopped, seeming to struggle with something. "And then what?" "And then maybe we can talk about what comes next. About whether there's a way out of this life that doesn't leave a power vacuum. About," he took a breath, "about a future. A real one." Alara's heart stuttered. "You mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean. You know that." She did know that. Adrian was brutal and violent and dangerous, but he was honest. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll talk about it. After." "After," he agreed. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Alara let herself believe that after might actually exist. Adrian found them 3 days later. The Volkov family. Russian syndicate, relatively new to the territory, ambitious enough to think they could muscle in by taking out Adrian's weakness. They'd miscalculated badly. Alara only knew because she heard the phone call. Adrian's voice, cold and precise, giving orders that would end in death. When he hung up, his expression was carved from ice. "It's done," he said. "They'll be handled by tonight." "How many?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." He looked at her for a long moment. 17, the entire leadership structure. Alara felt the number settle in her chest like a stone. 17 people. 17 lives ending because they'd made the mistake of coming after her. "I should feel worse about this," she said quietly. "Shouldn't I?" "Probably, but you don't get to feel guilty for surviving." "Is that what you tell yourself?" "Every single day." He left an hour later, dressed in black, armed, and dangerous. Alara wanted to ask him to stay, wanted to beg him not to add 17 more deaths to the weight he already carried. But she understood by now that some things were inevitable in this world. Some debts could only be paid in blood. "Come back to me," she said instead. "Always." He kissed her like it might be the last time, and then he was gone. Sophia found Alara in the library, staring at a book she wasn't reading. "He'll be all right," Sophia said, settling into the chair beside her. "You don't know that." "I know my son. He's survived worse." "That doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? Something I've never told Adrian?" Alara set down her book. "Of course." "When his father died, I was relieved, grateful even. That man was a monster, and Adrian had to become something equally monstrous just to survive him. But somewhere along the way, Adrian forgot that he didn't have to stay that way, that he could choose something different. He thinks if he leaves, there'll be war. There might be, but there also might not. The world changes. Sometimes the only thing keeping us trapped is our own fear of what happens if we try to escape. You want him to walk away. I want him to be happy. For the first time in his life, I want him to choose joy over obligation, and I think you're the only person who could make that possible." Alara's throat tightened. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. You ran into gunfire for a stranger. You married a man you didn't know to survive. You learned to shoot and kill to protect the people you love. You're stronger than you think, dear. You always have been. The words settled over Alara like a blanket, warm and reassuring. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For being the mother I haven't had in a long time. Sophia's eyes glistened. And thank you for being the daughter I always wanted. They sat together until the sun set, waiting for Adrian to come home. He returned at 3 a.m, covered in blood that wasn't his, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Alara met him at the door, and he collapsed into her arms like his strings had been cut. It's over, he said hoarsely. The Volkovs are gone. Their operations dismantled. Their assets seized. They won't be coming after you again. How many? All of them. I didn't leave anyone who could retaliate. Alara held him tighter. Are you hurt? No, just tired. So fucking tired, Alara. She led him upstairs, helped him out of his blood-stained clothes, and guided him into the shower. He stood under the hot water like a statue, and she washed the evidence of violence from his skin with gentle hands. When he was clean and wrapped in a towel, she dried him off and pulled him into bed. I can't keep doing this, he said into the darkness. I know. Every time I think it's over, there's another threat. Another family trying to take what's mine. Another fight I have to win or risk losing everything. Then stop fighting. He turned to look at her. What? Stop fighting. Walk away. Let someone else have the territory and the power and the endless violence. I can't. Why not? Give me one good reason why you can't. Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. Because I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. We'll learn together. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But it's possible. And I think... She took a breath. I think you want it. Deep down. You want out. He was quiet for so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, barely audible. Yeah, I do. Alara's heart stuttered. So do it. Please, before this world takes any more from you, before it takes you from me. I'd need time to transition power, to make sure there's no war, to liquidate assets and convert everything legitimate. How long? 6 months? Maybe a year? Then take a year. Take whatever time you need. Just promise me you'll try. Adrian pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. What if I fail? What if I can't actually walk away? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But at least you'll have tried. You're asking me to give up everything I've built. I'm asking you to choose a life over a legacy. There's a difference. He was silent again, but she could feel the tension in his body slowly easing. Okay, he said finally. I'll try. For you. For us. I'll try. Alara kissed him, tasting salt and hope. That's all I'm asking. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in months, neither of them had nightmares. The next morning, Adrian called a meeting with his top people. Alara sat beside him as he laid out his plan, a gradual transition of power, converting criminal operations into legitimate businesses, setting up trusts and succession plans. The room was silent when he finished. You're serious, Marco said finally. You're actually walking away. Not immediately, but yes, in a year, I'll be done with all of this. Why? James asked. You've built the strongest organization on the East Coast. Why give that up? Adrian's hand found Alara's under the table. Because I'm tired of watching good people die for territory that doesn't matter. Because I want a future that doesn't involve counting bodies. Because, he paused, because my wife asked me to, and she's never asked me for anything before. The men exchanged glances, and Alara could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Some looked skeptical. Some looked relieved. Vincent, still recovering but present via video call, just smiled. Who takes over? Thomas asked. That's what we're going to spend the next year figuring out. I need someone I trust, someone who can hold this together without starting a war. What about Vincent? Louise suggested. Vincent's image on the screen shook his head. I'm out too. After what happened, I'm done. I'm taking my pension and disappearing to somewhere warm. Marco, then, James said. He's got the business sense for it. Marco looked startled. I don't want it. None of us want it, Adrian said. But someone has to take it. Unless we dissolve the whole thing and let the territories scatter. That would cause a war, Thomas said immediately. Not if we do it right. If we convert everything legitimate first, if we sell off the criminal operations to families that can absorb them without conflict. Adrian leaned forward. It's possible. Difficult, but possible. The debate went on for hours. Plans were sketched out, revised, thrown away and restarted. By the time the meeting ended, they had the skeleton of an exit strategy. It wasn't perfect. It probably wouldn't work the way they hoped, but it was a start. As everyone filed out, Vincent's voice called from the screen. Adrian, a word? Adrian waited until the room was empty except for Alara. You're really doing this, Vincent said. Yeah. Good. It's about damn time. Well, Vincent's smile was genuine. You deserve a life, boss. You both do. And for what it's worth, I think you can pull this off. From your mouth to whoever might be listening. There's just one thing you should know. Adrian tensed. What? The Volkovs weren't working alone. He paused, his expression darkening. During the interrogation, they mentioned a partner, someone who approached them with intel about your security. About Alara. Alara's blood went cold. Who? They didn't know, just that someone from inside your organization sold them information. The revelation hit like a bomb. Someone on the inside. Someone Adrian trusted had betrayed them. Adrian's expression went deadly. You're certain? As certain as I can be. They were too well informed. Knew things only someone close would know. Any ideas who? No, but I'd start looking at anyone who had access to estate security protocols and knew about Alara's movements. After Vincent signed off, Adrian sat in silence for a long moment. How many people have that kind of access? Alara asked quietly. Maybe 10. All people I've worked with for years, people I'd trust with my life. One of them betrayed you. Yeah. His jaw clenched. And I'm going to find out which one. The investigation took 2 weeks. Adrian became obsessed, reviewing files, tracking movements, analyzing communications. He barely slept, barely ate, driven by the fury of betrayal. Alara watched him spiral and felt helpless to stop it. It was Thomas who finally found the proof. Financial records showing payments from a shell corporation tied to the Volkovs to an account belonging to David, the lawyer who'd been at their wedding. I can't believe it, Sophia said when Adrian told them. David's been with us for 15 years. Apparently loyalty has a price. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. And the Volkovs met it. What are you going to do? Alara asked. What I always do. Handle it. Adrian, he sold you out, Alara. He gave them the information they needed to come after you. Because of him, Vincent was tortured. Because of him, 8 of my men died in that warehouse ambush. He doesn't get to walk away from this. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to say there had to be another way. But she understood by now that betrayal in this world only had one punishment. David was brought to the estate 2 days later. He looked terrified as Adrian's men escorted him into the study where Adrian waited. You know why you're here, Adrian said. David's face crumbled. I can explain. Explain what? How you sold information to the Volkovs? How you helped them plan attacks that killed my people? How you put my wife in danger for money? They threatened my family, my daughter. They said if I didn't help them, they'd... So you chose your family over mine. I understand that, but it doesn't change what you did. Please, Adrian, please. I'm sorry, I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But they did get hurt. They died. Because of you. David fell to his knees. What do you want? I'll do anything. I'll testify. I'll give back the money. You'll die, Adrian said simply. That's what happens to traitors. No, please. My daughter, she's only 16. She needs... Your daughter will be taken care of. I'll make sure she and your wife are protected. But you're done. Alara watched from the doorway, her stomach churning. She understood the necessity, understood that mercy here would be seen as weakness. But watching Adrian order someone's death in cold blood was different from knowing he'd done it in the abstract. Do you want to say anything? Adrian asked, looking at her. He endangered your life. You have a right. Every eye in the room turned to Alara, David's pleading gaze, the guard's impassive stares, Adrian's carefully blank expression. She thought about the chase through the streets, about Vincent broken and bleeding, about 17 people dead because the Volkovs had known exactly where to strike. I want to know why, she said quietly. Why money mattered more than the people who trusted you. David's face twisted with shame. It wasn't just money. They had photos of my daughter, threatened to hurt her in ways I can't even say out loud. I panicked, made a choice I can't take back. You could have come to Adrian. He would have protected your family. I know that now. But in the moment, I was so scared. Alara looked at Adrian. His family, you'll really take care of them? I said I would. Even his daughter? Make sure she can go to college, have a life. Yes. Alara nodded slowly. Then do what you have to do, but make it quick. He doesn't deserve to suffer more than he already is. Adrian's expression softened fractionally. All right. He gestured to the guards, who pulled David to his feet. I'm sorry, David said, looking at Alara. I'm so sorry. I know, she said. I believe you, but sorry doesn't fix this. They took him away, and Alara left the room before she could hear the gunshot she knew was coming. She was in the garden when Adrian found her an hour later. It's done, he said. I know. You did the right thing, showing him mercy at the end. It doesn't feel like mercy. It feels like I just helped you kill someone. You did. But he made the choices that led to this, not you. Alara turned to face him. How much longer until we're out? Until we don't have to make these choices anymore? 10 months. Maybe less if we push harder. Then push harder, please. I don't know how many more deaths I can carry. Adrian pulled her into his arms. I promise. This is almost over. We're almost free. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe freedom was actually possible, but a small part of her wondered if you could ever really escape a world built on violence, or if it just followed you wherever you went. The months that followed were a blur of activity. Adrian systematically dismantled his criminal empire piece by piece. Operations were sold off to other families at carefully negotiated prices. Territory was ceded with treaties that prevented conflict. Legitimate businesses were strengthened and expanded. It was delicate, dangerous work. One wrong move could trigger the war he was trying to prevent, but slowly, impossibly, it started to work. By month 8, the transformation was undeniable. Adrian's organization had shrunk by 2/3, and what remained was mostly legitimate. He still had enemies, still had people who'd prefer him dead, but the immediate threats had faded. And then Alara missed her period. She stared at the pregnancy test in the bathroom, her hands shaking, not sure if what she felt was terror or joy or some combination of both. Pregnant. She was pregnant, with Adrian's child, in a life they were still trying to escape. She waited until that night to tell him. They were in bed, his arm around her waist, both half asleep. Adrian? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the darkness like a held breath. Adrian went completely still. What? I took a test today. 3 tests, actually. All positive. I'm pregnant. He sat up slowly, turning on the bedside lamp. His expression was unreadable. You're sure? Yes. How long? I don't know yet. Maybe 6 weeks? I have an appointment scheduled for next week. Adrian stared at her, and Alara couldn't tell what he was thinking. His face had gone through shock, fear, and something else she couldn't identify. Say something, she whispered. I'm going to be a father. Yeah, and you're going to be a mother. Looks that way. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not a bitter laugh or a scared one, but something genuine and warm. We're having a baby, he said, wonder in his voice. Are you happy about this? Happy? I'm terrified. I have no idea how to be a father. My own father was a monster, and I spent most of my life becoming exactly what he made me. What if I can't? Alara took his face in her hands. You are nothing like your father. Nothing. You're good and protective, and you care so deeply about the people you love, even when you try to hide it. You're going to be an amazing father. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you're already panicking about whether you'll be good enough. Your father never would have cared. Adrian's eyes were bright with emotion. I want out. Now. Not in 2 months. Now. I want our child born into a life that doesn't involve guns and death and constant fear. We're almost there. Just a little longer. I know, but I want... He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. I want better. For both of you. For all of us. Then let's finish this. Let's get out and never look back. Adrian kissed her with a desperation that made her heart ache. I love you. I should have said it before now. Should have said it 100 times. But I love you, Alara. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything. Tears spilled down Alara's cheeks. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. They held each other in the lamplight, and for the first time since this whole journey began, Alara believed they might actually make it. The final transition happened faster than anyone expected. Adrian found a buyer for the last of his criminal operations. A family from Chicago looking to expand east. The price was steep, the negotiations brutal, but by month 9 it was done. Adrian Moretti no longer ran a criminal empire. He was just a businessman with a pregnant wife and a future he was still learning to believe in. The celebration was small, just Sophia, Vincent, and a few trusted friends who'd helped make the transition possible. No elaborate party, no grand gestures, just quiet acknowledgement that they'd done the impossible. To new beginnings, Vincent toasted, raising his glass. To surviving long enough to see them, Marco added. They drank, and Alara felt the weight she'd been carrying for months finally start to lift. Later that night, after everyone had left, Adrian found her in the nursery they'd started preparing. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her now visible baby bump. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. Nothing. How different life is now compared to a year ago. Better or worse? Different. Harder in some ways. Better in others. She leaned back against him. I keep thinking about that morning in the diner. If I'd known what would happen, all the violence and fear and death, would I still have run? Would you? Alara thought about it honestly. Thought about the funerals and the blood and the nightmares, but also about Sophia's kindness and Vincent's sacrifice, and the man standing behind her who'd learned to love despite everything trying to teach him not to. Yeah, she said, I would. Every single time. Even knowing the cost? Especially knowing the cost, because the cost brought me here, to you, to this. She placed her hands over his on her stomach, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Adrian's breath hitched. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. Good, because I'm not letting you go. Not ever. They stood together in the almost finished nursery, and Alara let herself imagine the future. A child taking their first steps in this room. Birthday parties in the garden. Normal problems like homework and scraped knees instead of bullets and betrayal. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't even close. But it was theirs. Hard-won and blood-bought and more precious because of it. 3 months later, Alara went into labor on a Tuesday afternoon. Adrian was calm throughout, calmer than she was, which was saying something. He timed contractions, called the doctor, and got her to the private hospital they'd chosen without falling apart even once. It was only when she was actually in the delivery room, gripping his hand hard enough to break bones, that she saw the fear in his eyes. I can't lose you, he said hoarsely. Please don't. I'm not going anywhere, she gasped between contractions. This baby is just stubborn, like their father, or brave like their mother. The labor was long and difficult and exhausting, but when their daughter finally arrived, screaming her fury at the world, every second of pain disappeared. Adrian held her with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and Alara had never seen him look so vulnerable. She's perfect, he whispered. What should we name her? Alara asked. Adrian looked at his mother, who was crying in the corner, then at Alara, then back at the tiny person in his arms. Hope, he said. Her name is Hope. And it was. 6 months after Hope was born, they left the city. The estate was sold. The businesses transferred to managers who'd run them without Adrian's oversight. Every tie to the old life severed as cleanly as they could manage. They bought a farmhouse in the countryside, hours from anywhere that mattered. It was old and needed work, but it had land and quiet and absolutely no connection to the world they'd left behind. Vincent came with them, claiming he needed somewhere peaceful to finish recovering. Marco visited sometimes, bringing news from the city that slowly became less relevant. Sophia stayed in a cottage on the property, finally able to garden and read and exist without fear. And Alara and Adrian learned to be normal. It wasn't easy. Adrian still had nightmares, still sometimes woke up reaching for a gun that wasn't there, still flinched at loud noises and watched doors like enemies might come through them. But slowly, day by day, he relaxed. He learned to change diapers and do midnight feedings, learned to laugh at Hope's babbling and panic over every small cough, learned to be a father and a husband instead of a crime lord. And Alara learned that survival was just the beginning, that the real work was building a life worth surviving for. On Hope's first birthday, they threw a party in the garden. Just family, their small, strange, hard-won family. Marcus came down from the city, bringing gifts and stories. Vincent made a speech about being the world's most dangerous godfather. Sophia cried happy tears, and Adrian held Alara close as they watched their daughter smash cake into her hair. "We made it," he said quietly. "Yeah, we did. Do you ever regret it? Any of it?" Alara thought about the question honestly, about the diner and the bullets and the blood, about funerals and fear and learning to kill, about all the things she'd lost and all the things she'd gained. "No," she said. "Not for a second. Not even the scary parts? Especially not the scary parts. Those are what got us here." Adrian kissed her temple. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do." "I know. I love you too." They watched Hope demolish her birthday cake, surrounded by people who'd become family through fire and blood and choice. It wasn't the life Alara had imagined when she was slinging coffee in a diner, struggling to make rent, and wondering if anything would ever change. It was better, stranger, harder, bought with a price she'd never wanted to pay. But better, because she'd run toward gunfire and found something worth living for, because she'd married a monster and discovered he was just a man, because she'd learned that love wasn't always clean or simple or safe, but it was real, and that made it worth everything. That night, after Hope was asleep and the house was quiet, Alara stood in the doorway watching Adrian do dishes. Actual domestic dishes, not ordering someone else to do them, and felt her heart swell with something that felt like contentment. He looked up and caught her staring. "What?" he asked. "Nothing, just thinking about how far we've come. From bullets to birthday cake?" "Something like that." He dried his hands and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "No regrets?" "Not a single one." "Good, because I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." "Promise?" "Promise." And he kept it. Years later, when Hope was old enough to ask about how her parents met, Alara told her a simplified version, about a brave woman in danger and a scared waitress who decided to help, about how sometimes the right choice is the hardest one, and how love can grow in the strangest places. She didn't tell her about the blood, about the violence, about the world they'd escaped. That would come later, if it needed to come at all. For now, it was enough that they were here, safe, together, building a life that looked nothing like the one they'd left behind. Alara Vance had run toward gunfire on an ordinary morning and changed everything. She'd saved a life and lost her own in the process, only to find a better one waiting on the other side of fear. She'd married a criminal and taught him how to be human again. And she'd learned that survival wasn't enough, that real strength was choosing to live even when living was terrifying, that love could bloom in darkness if you were brave enough to let it. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still scars, still nightmares, still moments when the past came calling, but it was their ending, earned through blood and tears and impossible choices, and that made it perfect enough.